So seasons change. Winter turns to spring, to summer, and bears come and go. But winter and spring sometimes brush up against each other. And one carries with it the sweet embrace of rest and sleep. The other carries with it the promise and the potential of new life. One has an edge of bitterness, and the other has an edge of sweetness. Winter and spring had a daughter. The three of them existed together in a cycle for eternity, until one day their daughter wondered what it would be like to be human. It was the first snowfall of the season. An old couple sat inside their small, drafty little cottage. The fire was blazing in the hearth, a heat that could keep the cold at bay. And it was early morning. The snow was falling. They were cradling warm cups of tea in their hands. Peace, silence, solitude spread in front of them as they looked out their window at the town center. But the peace didn't last long because the snow was falling fast and it was falling thick. And so before too long, the silence was shattered by peals of laughter and screeching as all of the neighborhood children rushed out into the snow and snowballs went flying from every direction. While for this old couple in their cottage, that moment of tranquility suddenly took on sort of a bittersweet edge. With a sigh, the old woman stood up, still holding her tea that had one last sip left. And finishing it, she set it down. She turned to her husband. "Come. We can make our own snow child." And he looked at her with this expression of complete surprise. Even after years of marriage, she could still surprise him with these moments of pure joy. And so they bundled on an extra sweater, and they wrapped up their scarves, they pulled the hats down close, and they went out. Snow angels flew across the city center, while snowballs whizzed overhead. But they found a tree, and with their mittened hands, they piled the snow up, and they tried to carve out an outline until it was a nice mound. They found a stick, and they used this to add what they thought might be a cute little chin, and then little sleeping eyes, and old crusty dried up leaves to add a wisp of downy hair. They had spent so much time making their little snow child that they hadn't even noticed that the laughter was quieter and less frequent as all the children had run inside for hot soup and fresh bread. So as they sat there looking at their little snow child, they of course didn't see two stray snowballs come flying from out of nowhere and hitting them smack in the face. But when they looked back, their snow child was gone, and there was a baby in the snow. And you can't leave a baby in the snow, so the old woman scooped the baby up. "We have a child." And the child was cooing and giggling with a fistful of snow that she had somehow managed to snatch, and she was shoving it in her face. The little dimpled cheeks, and the old woman brought the baby inside. She bounced it and she sang to it, but she noticed that if she ever got too close to the fire, the baby just started wiggling around and letting out these awful screeches. And so she stayed closer to the drafty window. And when she took the baby outside, the icicles hung from the rooftop, and the baby would wiggle out a little hand and break one off. She ate icicles like they were candy canes. In a period of only a few short days, their little baby snow child had grown up into a young woman. She had long, straight hair that hung past her shoulders, pale enough to be almost white, but glinted gold in the sun. Her skin opaque as a frosted lake. Eyes cracked and frosty like a window pane. And so they called her Snegurochka. Snegurochka, the Snow Maiden. Well, Snegurochka was a shy girl, and she kept mostly to herself, but she loved her parents. She learned quickly, and so her mother taught her to knit and to weave and to spin and to make soup, but she just stuck to chopping up the vegetables because the soup was too hot. And her father taught her how to sharpen knives, and her favorite thing was to go out in the snow and chop the wood because she didn't need a coat. But her parents worried about her. She was very quiet. Snegurochka, you should go out. You should make friends. We're old and boring. You should have friends your own age. Oh, I'm very happy. And so they lived together. Well, one day, the streets erupted in color. Music, dancing, gaiety, frivolity. It was the midwinter festival. And there sat Snegurochka at her chair, looking out at the street. There were so many colors. Everybody had put on their brightest scarves and their most colorful hats to battle that dismal gray sky that hung so low overhead and the muddy brown and white snow in the streets. Snegurochka, go out! Well, that was all the urging she needed. She rushed outside, and there were so many people. Kupava was the belle of the town. She had rich, luxuriant curls that tumbled over her shoulder, raven black, deep, dark eyes that glinted with mysteries yet to be discovered, and lips that you could drown in. She saw Snegurochka as she came out of the house, and it was a small town. She thought she knew everyone, and here was a girl she'd never met. Hello! You're new! I am Kupava. What is your name? Snegurochka. Snegurochka. What a funny name. Come with me. I will show you around. I will introduce you to everyone. We will eat hot nuts and drink tea and go dancing. And so Kupava and Snegurochka were best friends right off the bat. You must meet Lil. This is Lil. He's our shepherd boy. He plays on the flute so magnificently. Lil, this is Snegurochka. And Snegurochka looked at Lil. She smiled. Hello. And Lil looked at Snegurochka and tried not to turn red, and he shuffled his feet in the snow. Hi. And so Snegurochka and Lil and Kupava were inseparable. Oh, I can't wait for you to meet Mezgir. Mezgir is my lover. He's a traveling merchant, and he has seen all of the far lands. He comes back with so many stories. And when he comes, he'll be here soon because it's the festival, and I'll get to introduce you. And sure enough, there he was, just at the other end of the square. She rushed up to him. This is Snegurochka. She's my new friend. And now that you're here, well, we can go dancing because, well, you know, Lil would have had to dance with both of us, but now I can dance with you, and Lil can dance with Snegurochka. And so they danced. But as Mezgir held Kupava tight and whirled her around the dance floor, he was looking over her shoulder at this pale, new young maiden that he'd never seen before. Well, merchants come and merchants go. And so Mezgir went. And when he came back, it was straight to Snegurochka's house that he went. He knocked on the door. "Come dance with me." "Oh, is Kupava coming? Where is she?" "Oh, she's happy at home. Come out and dance with me." I don't know. I don't know. "Well, you could just let me in and then we'll sit and talk." Okay. And every day, Mezgir came to Snegurochka's house. "Come dance with me." "Oh, I couldn't. I couldn't." And Kupava didn't even know that Mezgir was back in town until the rumors started flying from house to house to house, and then she heard. And when she heard, a black hole formed, and the tears wouldn't stop falling as she ran through town, burst through Snegurochka's door. "How could you do this to me? You were my friend, and Mezgir danced with me, and I loved him, and he's gonna marry you? No, I'm sorry, no, that's not, no." "I thought we were friends." And with that, the tears stopped. Kupava turned, and with a flurry of curls following her, she stalked out. She went to the mayor's house. She told her story. "I have no honor left." And so the mayor called Snegurochka. Snegurochka had mostly only seen her parents' small, humble little cottage. And so when she got to the mayor's house, it was so big. Furs on the floor, paintings on the wall, marble statues. And there he sat in a large armchair, and there was Kupava with fire in her eyes. "You have dishonored this woman. You have taken her man. What do you say for yourself?" "No, I don't understand. I don't understand. I danced with Lil. I said no." And so the mayor looked at Snegurochka and he looked at Kupava. "There is no injury here that I can fix. Go home. Go home." Kupava glared fire at Snegurochka, and she walked out. And Snegurochka slowly made her way home, but Kupava, she couldn't go home. The tears had started flowing again, and all she could do was wander the streets, wander around through the night, until she made her way to the town well and just collapsed in a heap in front of it, sobbing her heart out until the tears wouldn't come anymore. And then when she was exhausted and truly well spent, with a shaking hand, she reached up to the top of the well and she pulled herself to her knees with her arms on the well, and she tumbled in. Snegurochka was at home when she heard the news, and all she could do was just sit in her chair by the window, and she just stared off into the distance. Every day, Lil came and he tapped at the window, but she just stared. Her parents, of course, were worried. Snegurochka, we know it's hard, it hurts. We're so sorry. As time passed, she slowly became a little bit more active and would at least help out around the house, chopping the vegetables and knitting, but it was always with this dead look in her eye. And still, Lil came every day. He tapped at the window. Time continued to pass. The gray sky didn't hang down quite so low. The snow stopped falling and started melting until the world turned from gray to brown. And still every day, Lil came and he tapped at the window. And she saw him. She got up, she opened the door, she threw her arms around him. And this tightness that she had felt knotting deeper and deeper and deeper inside her was still so tight. As she just threw her arms around him. Can we go for a walk? Yes, yes, whatever you want. And so they went out and they walked through the town. They left the town, they went to the edge of the forest. And Snegurochka could feel that the ground wasn't quite as hard beneath her feet as it had been before. And where the sun shone more frequently, there were almost little flecks of green poking out of the ground as they made their way into the woods. She found a large tree curled up in its roots. Will you play your flute? Please, Lil. I just want to hear something beautiful. And so Lil took out his flute and he began to play. The sun was streaming through the trees. He played a beautiful melody to welcome in the spring, and Snegurochka could finally feel that knot melt away, and the tears just flowed down her face while the sun shone. And while she was crying and crying and crying, there was a hint of a smile that began to show up as she looked at Lil playing his flute. Lil played his flute in the woods, and he played a beautiful, sweet melody to welcome in the spring. And he stood under a tree, and he was alone. At the base of the tree was a puddle. And rising from the puddle were wisps of steam. Winter and spring often brush up against each other, and one carries with it the sweet embrace of sleep and rest, and one the potential for new life. One has an edge of bitterness, and the other has an edge of sweetness. Lil would often go and visit that old couple in the cottage. Winters would come. The snow would lie thick on the ground, but when the wind picked up and made its way through that drafty window, those tendrils of cold, when the cold came in, it didn't cut them to the core quite the way that it once had.